Welcome. I'm Kathleen O'Toole, Takoma Park's current Poet Laureate, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our second original online poetry reading, where you'll be joined this evening or this afternoon, wherever you're sheltering and whenever you're watching this, to see 4 poets, 3 of whom are brand new to our Takoma Park audience. I have to admit that I'm not used to not seeing your smiling faces in the audience before me. So I'm imagining that some of you might be regulars and others might be brand new to our poetry readings and joining us to hear the voice of a poet that you like. So last month, we were able to have 4 poets, a themed reading, Speaking Our Truths, which you can still find online at tacomaparkmaryland.gov. That's tacomaparkmd.gov/arts, where we're posting previous live events as well as original online content. And we'd love to have you join us on a regular basis until we're able to be back together again. Tonight we have 3 poets who've never joined us before and 1 veteran to our stage. And I'm going to say a few words about the poets before you are able to join them in their own intimate filming space to hear some of their original poems. Tonight we have Kathryn Allen, who is an anthropologist who actually retired from George Washington University to devote herself to creative writing. Much of her poetry derives from her extensive field work as an anthropologist in the Andes Mountains of Peru, and you'll hear some of those poems tonight. Jamie Ferrugia retired from Morgan Stanley to focus on many creative endeavors, including songwriting, poetry, and prose. And you may actually have heard some of his instrumental tracks if you listen to WAMU public radio as part of the Capitol Soundtrack project. And Ginny Hartman, the one of these poets that I've actually met, who is a Pushcart Prize nominee for poetry. This is her first time reading with us. She teaches at George Washington University, and she is a poet and a fiction writer. And I had the delight of being with her poetry class myself this past semester when students were still meeting. And finally, the veteran poet who's joining us is Gary Stein, whose book Touring the Shadow Factory won the Brick Road Poetry Contest and was recently published in July of 2019. He'll be reading some of those poems tonight, and his poetry has appeared widely in journals, including the Atlanta Review, the Penn Review, and Asheville Poetry Review. We're hoping that you'll be able to meet and hear these poets in person on our stage on Thursday, November 19th. But in the meantime, enjoy these 4 wonderful poets tonight. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathryn Allen. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to read you some of my poems. And I have a group of poems that draw on my experience as an anthropologist in the high Andes. The first one is called Necessity's Spindle. The spindle I'm referring to is a drop spindle. And as it's kind of like a top with a long axis. And as the thread builds up on it, it takes on a shape kind of like that, which I've also given to the poem. Spinning is a kind of backdrop to life in many Andean communities. And my thoughts often went back to my undergraduate reading of Plato's Republic and this incredible vision of necessity's spindle toward the end of it. Drop and spin, yelled fate, while God was intoning, let there be light. She threw her spindle into that radiant mess, whirled it till the world took shape. Lots of people know this. Even Plato knew it. After all that dialogue, the good, justice, virtue, philosopher, kings, a republic without poets. He ends with a burst of elegiac vision. Our world's axis is a pillar of pure light, a spindle twirling on necessity's lap. She spins the planet's orbits. They hum music of the spheres. My friend Basilia, she was a real spinner, Andean mountain woman, spindle on her knees, turning against her rough black, red-rimmed skirt, under the skirt, thin legs, calloused feet. Above, faded shirt, threadbare vest, wispy braids, clear, tired eyes, and her mouth, moving and spinning a river of shining words. They glistened, whirled, settled evenly in place. Death felled her as she strolled, laughing on market day. Her spindle toppled, trailing thread, rolling unspun wool in dust. She's gone. But the spindle stays with me, turning still, singing the spheres. I see it always, necessary thread of my life. And now I have a pair of poems. The first one is called First Day in a New Village. She adjusted her shawl. They won't like you, 'cause you've got no respect. She hoisted a bundle on her back. You don't greet them, you don't share cocoa with them. She laughed, stamped bare calloused feet. Look at you in those shoes, clumpety clump. She laughed, skirt swishing. You may as well leave now, she said. Angry mountains are big trouble. I looked down at my hiking boots, dismayed. Or maybe, she relented, you could stay. Greet them like this. Lord Pachawani, Lord Antakaka. May I come in? You have to learn the names. And its partner is called Years Later, the Road Back. 2 children with a donkey waiting. The truck pulls over. My stop. Tired, dusty bodies. Too many passengers. Jostle, mutter, nod farewells. The gate opens. Childish, calloused hands reach out to help me down. It's the season of rain, mist, mud, treeless hills briefly hazed with green. I know these boulders, knolls, and gullies. I know the path. We set out. These children, walking beside me, are the same and not the same as those I loved. I know these looks, gestures, passed down 3 generations. Here come the hills, same as ever, Pachawani, Antakaka, looming through the mist. Their gaze hasn't changed. Hello, hills, I'm back. May I come in? Will they wrap themselves in fog and turn away? Maybe not. We keep on walking. And this one is called Slaughtering Sheep, High Andes. I would make myself watch. The sheep trussed, lying on her side, eyes going dull, throat sliced open, blood spurting into a basin. As Louise sang softly, sawed the jugular deftly, steadied her gently through death's brief spasm, I stood by. Louise, blowing coca leaves, calling to mountains, Lords Antakaka, Pachawani, Ayapata, look kindly here, this blood is yours. Once he offered me the knife. You do it this time? Could I? Bear down on the blade, saw straight across the throat, hold the creature steady while she bled and died? Perhaps. But could I call those hungry mountains, bring them close to join with her in death and us in gratitude? No. The moment passed. And this one is called Moonrise Departure, High Andes. And in the Quechua language, a night of full moon that's so bright that it casts shadows, that's called Quillapunchai, moon day. Mist followed moon rising, filled mountain crevices like milk. Mother moon, you said. Moon day. Mist followed moon rising like unspun wool trailing from spindles. Moon day, you said. I wept. Your old hard hand, light as mist, brushed back my hair. And now to end, I have a few poems closer to home. This one is a sonnet called Body Thoughts. She starts to turn to him, but he is gone, and has been gone for years. Years since they slept in that big bed that nearly filled the room, and sometimes in the darkness seemed to slip, boat-like on a lake, where breaths like waves lapped at a far-off shore, and sometimes snores rolled like breakers the bedboat had to brave and find its way to calm. Those sojourns moored her daylight life, year after year, breath after breath, thousands of nights. Her bed is smaller now. Lights out, she hears traffic, rain, barking, crickets, slight settling in the walls. Yet verging into sleep, all unaware, she turns to him as though he were still there. And my last poem, with apologies to Gertrude Stein, is called A Rose Is. I was walking my dog on a crisp morning in fall, season of chrysanthemums, and on the sidewalk, suddenly, under my feet, were petals, bright red rose petals, and a bit farther on, the mangled rose itself, torn to bits, and off some distance in the bushes, the bouquet, fresh from the florist with ribbon and cellophane, a dozen red I love you roses, or actually 12 stems, one headless with the bloom torn off and scattered, but the others so fresh and fine, and I wondered whether to leave them or take them home. So I hesitated. Then, knowing I could never know what angry grief, what disappointed rage or shock of loss they signified before I came along, I picked them up and kept on walking. Thank you very much.
Tonight I'd like to explore the intersection between narrative poetry and songwriting. And I'll begin that with a poem that was published in Big Muddy, a journal of the Mississippi River Valley, entitled The Calling. Stunned, upside down, pinned hard to the soft bottom of the shallow pond, reality not yet sunk in, hands still clutching the steering wheel of his capsized Farmall 450 tractor, its diesel engine oozing vital fluids, heaving and grinding, mammoth tires, half in, half out of the water, spin like paddle wheels on a beached riverboat. He'd cut that 10-acre terrace of sweet alfalfa that sloped down to the western edge of the pond for nearly 24 seasons, like his father and his father's father before him, getting 2, sometimes 3 cuttings before the first frost set in. But this will be his last. he won't live to see the winter wheat ripen. For a foolish mistake, a front wheel dropped over the pond bank. They'll say he died doing what he loved, but it wasn't love exactly, more like instinct. The calming clatter of the sickle bar mower joining with ancient voices that chanted down through the ages, assuring him he was a member of the farming tribe, the tribe of steel plows and busted sod, seed crops and bottomland, of green shoots and tassels, hay rakes and scythes, of storing up in barns and silos reaching to the heavens. He pushes down panic and tunes his mind to the rhythm of the sickle bar mower laying low the hay, of Sunday afternoon lovemaking between the ancient sycamores, of his children and his children's children, generations rising and falling, rising and falling. His lungs collapse. He watches the broad bubbles swell to the surface, break the rainbow oil slick, and drift toward an egg yolk sun floating in a watery sky, blue as the milk taint on his Nana's old butter churn. My next offering will be a song lyric that I wrote without the music, to give you an idea of the same narrative form and nature of songwriting. It's called Your Name. She caresses the quilt that lies warm against her lap, says, I'd sure like to know who made this. When I look at these colors, run my hand across the cloth, I feel someone's love in every stitch. He leans close and whispers, You made that quilt by hand. She looks up confused and says, Tell me once again your name. Tell me your name one more time. Your name. I don't know why it slips my mind. Your voice sounds so familiar, but your face is a memory I can't find. Tell me your name one more time. She holds tight to his arm as she points across the room, says, Who put my name on the door? And who hung those faces on the wall above my bed? I don't recall having seen them before. He leans close and whispers, That's your family and your friends. But she looks up, confused, and says, Tell me once again your name. Tell me your name one more time. Your name. I don't know why it slips my mind. Your voice sounds so familiar, but your face is a memory I can't find. Tell me your name one more time. He bends down to kiss her cheek, tells her he'll be back next week, but halfway down the hall, he hears his mama call. Your name! Tell me your name one more time. Your name! I don't know why it slips my mind. Your voice sounds so familiar, but your face is a memory I can't find. Tell me your name. Tell me your name one more time. For my final offering, I'm going to join music and lyric together for a narrative song, and you'll see how this comes full circle, songwriting and narrative poetry. And this song is called Free. Seats folded down flat, Mama dozing in the front seat, me and my brothers in the back. I can hear the tires humming, Daddy singing soft and low to the AM radio. And like a slow train rolling, like an easy rain falling, like a big river running, it just carries me. 'Cause it was a time for believing in the dreams I'd been dreaming, and maybe it was just the moonlight through the trees, but I was free. Yeah, yeah, I was free. I was hauling hay in Kansas when I turned 21, and you were wiping down tables, your hair always half undone. And at night we drive that flatbed to some field they just mowed, and we dance to the FM radio. And like a slow train rolling, like an easy rain falling, like a big river running, it just carried me. 'Cause it was a time for believing in the dreams we'd been dreaming, and maybe it was just the moonlight through the trees. We were free. Yeah, yeah. Now I think everyone's asleep as I drive down the road. Then I hear our little wild-haired daughter singing to the radio. Sing it, girl. And like a slow train rolling, like an easy rain falling, like a big river running, it just carries me. 'Cause it's still a time for believing in the dreams we've been dreaming, just like the moonlight through the trees. We're free. Yeah, yeah, baby, we're free. Thank you so much. Have a great evening and stay safe.
Hello, Takoma Park. Thank you so much for inviting me to read. My name is Virginia Hartman, and as I was going through the poems that I thought I might read today, I realized that a lot of them toggle between having parents and being a parent. So you might see some of those themes in the poems that I'm going to read to you today. The first one is forthcoming in the Sligo Journal. It's called Pockmarked to Zimmer G. The second volume of the New World Dictionary is falling to pieces. Duct tape supports its spine, where it sits next to its A to pocket veto sister, on the built-in shelves in a light-struck room with a tile floor, a wool rug. Is it treasure or is it trash? The volume's blue cover is worn out from use, consulted often by a crossword completer I love, a Scrabble gloater, laying down all his letters on a triple-word score. He would his satisfaction, then announce his outsized points. When I was young, I endured the game, his unbeatability, his galling certainty of a win. Now, I conquer the daily puzzle, seeking answers only from within. I vanquish Scrabble, resisting outward signs of triumph. My scores mimic my father's knack for language and a knowledge that, in the end, when it mattered most, he was not invincible. Word. Beyond death, You live in this faded, full book I will not let go. This next poem appeared in Beltway Poetry Quarterly in 2018, which was a wonderful publication. And I wrote it after reading a poem by Denise Levertov. So this is after Denise Levertov, and it's called A Present. A present I would never ask for, the questions you have placed in my hand. But there they are. They are still yours to answer. But like the chick I say I hatched for the science fair, my grandfather, my parents, and I bent over the warming light of my suburban bedroom, watching the tiny horned beak struggle its way out, peck by exhausted peck. I say I hatched the chick, but really it hatched itself. I just provided the warmth. And likewise will I close my hand around your questions and muster all the warmth within me for you to grow until you break them open from the inside. Here we're toggling backwards again. This one, called Album, was published by the Potomac Review. Album. Memory can't hold it all. A generation, 2 at most, and if you're lucky, a lock of hair, a shiffer robe. Flea markets are full of old photo albums, crumbling black pages, faces beaming out from a forgotten past. No one wants these, sold in lots, someone who mattered, but no more. Light a candle for the failure of memory, objects that hold no one here. They are Whitman's grass now, memory in carbon molecules, reorganized, alone. The next one I'll read is about an old family story about my father when he was a boy falling from a tree. He ruptured his spleen, and it was very dramatic. When I was working with this poem, I was working with students, and we were working on enjambment. So pardon me if I signal some of the line breaks. I was trying to demonstrate that enjambment can increase the urgency of a poem. The Fall. He fell from a tree. It was our oldest family story, so that after a while it lost its meaning. And when someone asked me today what kind of a tree did he fall from, I had to say, I don't know, and I wish I had asked him, had asked my grandma what those minutes, those hours were like, those minutes, the sound, the thud, the cry of the others, the running, the scooping, the drive to the hospital. Dead, she was thinking, he's dead and I'll never, but the doctors took him from her, rushed him to somewhere she could not go, and she waited. The children at school were praying, were told to pray for the classmate who died for a moment, the fall and the thud and the bleeding, but he did not die. Now, all these years later, he is dead, and I can't know the height of the kind, of the bark, of the leaf, the exhilaration, the view just before the misstep, the fall. And now we go back to being a parent. This one is called Every Dream. Every dream is of water. In most, you are still small. In one, we fly over lakes, streams, swamps, sprinklers tick-tick over lawns. In another, you are on the opposite shore of a wild river, reaching. Sometimes I am above the surface, and you are below, struggling to break through and breathe. Last night, I fell with you from a dock, spiraling downward, knowing when we plunged, I would pull you up and together we would struggle toward shore, both of us bathed in the rain of trouble, washed in the near drowning, learning how to swim. This one's called A Song. I used to like church songs, those sweet melodies bubbling up to remind me of the Lord, my shepherd, leading me to green pastures, etc. Now I'm world-weary, don't attend, can no longer summon the peaceful wisdom once received. The longing for a song, however, does not fade. Could a poem somehow fill that need, this pencil's gray whispers providing notes to sing? If so, then lay a table before me and comfort me, O poem. Lead me to stillness on the crooked way home. I just have one more, and that is called Kingfisher. I have to admit, I have had times when I struggle with looking back a little too much in time. Kingfisher. Going with the flow may mean you're an optimist. You're on that lazy river, cool on a hot day, the current strong in one direction. You float toward the inevitable. Why swim upstream? You can look behind you. It's pretty back there, but you'll exhaust yourself trying to get back. You'll tire and turn again, face up, spent, a subject of the slipstream. Instead, why not look up at the trees passing above, the clouds like sheep? A kingfisher whistles past, dipping close, as if you are a part of the river. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Good evening, and thank you for tuning in, and thanks to the City of Takoma Park for making this virtual reading possible. This evening I'm going to be reading from my latest book, Touring the Shadow Factory. And I hope you'll enjoy some of these poems. In this pandemic period, the first poem I'm going to read is called A Cremationist's Day Off. It's our hope that the cremationists will have a year or more off. After hours, my neighbor turns out the lights and slips from the crematorium, locking up fresh dead for the night. When rowing those pilgrims across the river of flame, he wears a lab coat and asbestos gloves, wields a long metal oar to pedal waves of memory. And after the blazing white torrent, sometimes skeleton knobs remain, shoulders and hips, until the giant compactor grinds bone to dust. He says survivors fear finding the familiar in the part of death celebrated on the mantle. While the ovens rest, the neighbor squats in his garden, the wildest on the block, wearing plaid shorts and black socks, an ordinary guy teasing tender green shoots from knuckle-deep loam. When he thinks no one is looking, he lifts his hand to sniff the darkness under his nails. My sister-in-law lives in the country. This next poem is for her. It's called In the Country, Deer. Each night, deer wander from the woods, fan out, each to a different house, a different window, waiting for a woman to wake to their stare. Once from her bedroom, Anne saw eyes in the dark through bubbled glass, a prism of rain. Some say God watches every move. Through the window of heaven, he sees our thoughts as if the skull were his theater. He knows the hour of the last breath of every last soul until the end of time. In the country is no theater, no zoo. The walls of a cottage appear. The deer watch Anne kneel by her bed, nostrils flare, ears twitch. The deer wait for her to pray, sing in her cage, or flick a switch to cover herself in a blanket of light. Each night the next miracle. When my children were young, we built them a treehouse. Built to free the boys from bed and board, their careful parents, we let the stars be our eyes, cool air tuck them in. The bundle of boards, slats, bolts, and nails that held them steady in the breeze freed us for nights of our real selves. Now outgrown as their bruised soccer cleats, it sits like a vagrant in our yard, hoping for a handout or a coat of varnish. So I climb the ladder to their abandoned castle, their fort, spaceship, tower, and duck my head to enter a window of air. I place my palette on the splintered slats, sagging with a man's weight, trusting what we built on faith in the branches. Long has this vacant house waited for me to take possession, to sleep in their place in this vast kingdom of time. I was jealous of that treehouse. We often have second thoughts about things. This poem is called Hindsight. If you look over your shoulder to see what's behind you, a neck swivels only so far into the past. If you turn your head, the finch, pecking thistle at the feeder out the window, turns to memory. And the dark puddles from yesterday's rain are air today, the way ghosts evaporate. But in the cemetery of the dead and their dead, the beautiful earth brims thick with bones. This last poem was for my father's last Thanksgiving. This next poem. Washing the car. That last Thanksgiving, the Toomers took a holiday. While the women cleared turkey bones and salad plates, he walked into warm November light. Then he uncoiled a hose, sprayed the Buick, sponged it, and polished circles in the chrome with the old chamois from the trunk. And while the coffee brewed, no one missed him yet, though some of us caught this last chore through the glass, one bent man managing what work was left to do. Perhaps he thought his place in time depended on the order left behind, turning metal into grace that glinted in the moon when a woman rolled her husband home that night, asleep in his clean car. I did a lot of fishing when I was young. This one is called Cleaning the Catch. It's in 2 parts. Part 1. When the twitching ends, or better before, scrape with the flat of your blade. Let the gritty scales fly and root in the hair of your arm. Slip behind the pectoral, sever the head. Gash a thin line from belly to anus, spill the guts, look for eggs, so good in butter and lemon. Irrigate the cavity. Part 2. Though you scrub with vinegar and soap, you may wake to scales in your bed, and beneath your nails the rank odor of fish, on your breath its breath. What's stolen from a river haunts, again the arcing rainbow, a lure locked on its lips, its agony and death smell return. No fish is as simple as its body. Once we too lived inches from air. This next poem is for my wife. After we replace the bay window. It gets dark early in winter when I drive up toward the warm yellow light from the kitchen. I see more clearly now, through the new glass, a woman facing out, her back to the stove, reading at the white table where a stubby candle burns. She can't see me walking up the long blacktop, perhaps watched by a deer from the pine shadows. She can't see me walking from the darkest part of the year toward my seat on the other side of that candle she lit at about 6 to read or maybe to see me differently. As a little change of pace and tone, here's a lighter poem. We all lose things now and then spend time looking for them. Sometimes we find them, sometimes we don't. This is called Joy in Heaven on the Return of the Egg That Was Lost. While the pan sits on the coal burner and time softens the butter, as it softens all of us, I tour the counter again, pull out all 4 shells from the fridge, peek behind the fish, the tub of grated cheese, the Kalamata olives, looking for the prodigal egg that slept not long ago in the cardboard dormitory with his brother. Knowing an invisible egg, like a drowned corpse on the 3rd day, will bubble to the surface grotesquely, announcing, "Here I am." I call the kitchen police. She retraces my morning from newspaper on the blacktop to the powder room where I have never misplaced an egg. Back to the stove, the garbage, the sinister blades of the disposal, all suspects now in the glare of her terrible eye. Then she jabs a finger in my gut. "Didn't you put an egg in the burgers last night? Are you like me, searching for something not there, happy to find nothing lost?" Friends, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope to see you again in the fall. Please be careful, stay healthy.